name's Redford, right?
Yeah. Why?
Your mother sent me.
The newer work of Nicholas Winding Refn is an acquired taste, as it's far from realistic, slow, and methodical in execution, and often features scenes of intense violence. This is of course all by design. Nicholas Winding Refn has said that he has grown tired of trying to capture realism, as that's almost impossible to do. It's clear that he's far more interested in making films that are set in a heightened sense of reality. This makes his work hard to watch for those not accustomed to his type of storytelling. What makes his newer work even more alienating is the fact that they have a very small amount of dialogue in them when compared to other films. Refn seems to be more interested in telling stories with his characters' emotions rather than dialogue. While I am a fan of his movies, the little to no dialogue can get annoying at times. So I was glad to see that Too Old to Die Young has a decent amount of dialogue. The show is about a cop whose life is thrown into chaos after the murder of his partner. The show has many themes and tackles a lot of different subjects, such as how some people use violence to give their life a sense of meaning and purpose. It also examines the many reasons why people commit acts of violence. This show, or 13-hour movie, whatever you want to call it, is by far one of the most self-indulgent things that this director has ever made. And when I say self-indulgent, I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. To me, I find joy in watching a director make whatever they want to make with almost no limitations. And while that sometimes can lead to a disastrous film or TV show, I think this is one of the few times where the results ended up positive. Too Old to Die Young has one of the best opening shots to a television show that I have ever seen. Not because it's packed with great visuals, but because it's a perfect stage setter for the show, as anyone that isn't into the slow pace could just stop watching right there. There are many shots like that opening pan in the show, and they're all used for that same purpose, to show us the world that each character lives in. Unsurprisingly, the show looks great. Despite his color blindness, Refn has always had a great eye for visuals. The cinematography is great, as it captures the emotions and mood of each scene. Sometimes all that neon can be a bit much, but for the most part it has the perfect amount. The score is composed by Cliff Martinez. When paired with this director, he seems to produce his best work, and here's no different. The performances here are mostly great. They seem to be both exaggerated and subdued at the same time, which is hard to do without coming off as robotic. If I had to pick the best performance of the show, I would pick Gina Malone's performance. You can just tell that she loves this role, as she absolutely chews up the scenery. Jesus' performance is a close second though, as he just exudes a sinister aura and mommy issues. He's able to make the character feel so likable and sympathetic that you can't help but root for this sick fuck, as he's clearly not all there mentally. Despite the little screen time John Hawkes has when compared to the other characters, he still leaves this lasting impression, as you can feel the pain and loneliness that the character feels. Miles Teller does an okay job as the lead of the show, but he's often overshadowed by the other actors, as he seems to be doing his best Ryan Gosling impression. I couldn't help but want more from his performance. The show uses CGI blood terribly, which creates one of the worst moments in the show, which is a shot where a character is executing men, and after he shoots each one of them, we see a bunch of fake CGI blood, which comes off as hilarious and not impactful at all. The show is pretty bold in its episode structure, as it chooses not to have the main character in its second episode, which is over 1 hour and 30 minutes long. Granted, the episode is pretty great, but it can be pretty hard to watch if you don't find Jesus a captivating character. Speaking of the show's runtime, the length of each episode makes it really hard to binge. I think it's best enjoyed when you watch 1 or 2 episodes at a time. Watching the show kind of feels like watching the director play around creatively for over 13 hours, using the actors as his little action figures, making them do whatever depraved thing he wants them to, and for the most part, that's pretty entertaining. You could tell that he has complete creative control here. Episode 5 is by far the best of the 10, and if you're hesitant about watching the show, I would recommend you watch that episode, as it's the high point of the series, and if you don't like that episode, chances are you're not gonna like any of them. It's a perfect dialogue-driven mood piece. As for if the show has a satisfying conclusion, I would have to say yes for some characters, and no for others. So if you want a full conclusion to every character's arc, then I would probably stay away from this show, because despite alluding to a second season, I don't think this is getting one. What surprises me with the reception of the show is some of the criticism leveled against it. A lot of people have called this a misogynistic exercise in violence, and a glorification of it, when in reality the show is criticizing that. The themes of the show are often way too apparent. Maybe this is because Refn felt like he had to spell it out for the audience, which, considering the criticism the show got levied at it, he might have had to, but scenes like this spell things out a little too much.
Democracy's my bitch! Democracy's my bitch!
And this is from the NRA, bitch.
Overall, I'd say Too Old to Die Young is pretty entertaining and worth a watch, even if you only watch one episode. That's if you don't find the director's approach to storytelling pretentious and boring.